Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Dayamotire Nashta Preshvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Tamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. So we ask everyone's blessings and prayers that we can all together as a happy family under the shelter of Lord Chaitanya and Srila Prabhupada remember the beautiful lotus feet of Krishna. That's what today's verses are about. Karmanya parimeyani manasapi sureshvarahe saha sankarshanas chakre Bhagavan Madhusudanaha. Karmani, activities. Aparimeyani, immeasurable, unlimited. Manasa api, even by such plans, perceived within the mind. Sura Ishvari, by the controllers of the universe like Brahma and Shiva. Saha Sankarshana, along with Sankarshan Baladev. Chakre, performed. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Madhu Sudanaha, the killer of the Madhu demon. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, with the cooperation of Sankarshan, Balaram, performed activities beyond the mental comprehension of even such personalities as Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. For instance, Krishna arranged the battle of Kurukshetra to kill many demons for the relief of the entire world. And then text 61. Kalojanishyamananam dukha shoka tamonudam anugrahaya bhaktanam supunyam vyatanodyashaha. Translation and purport. To show causeless mercy to the devotees who would take birth in the future, in this age of Kali, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna acted in such a way that simply by remembering him, one will be freed from all the lamentation and unhappiness of material existence. In other words, he acted so that all future devotees, by accepting the instructions of Krishna consciousness stated in Bhagavad Gita, could be relieved from the pangs of material existence. Purport. The Lord's activities of saving the devotees and killing the demons, paritranaya saranam vinashaya chadushkritam, take place side by side. Krishna actually appears for the deliverance of the sadhus or bhaktas, but by killing the demons, he shows them mercy also. For anyone killed by Krishna is liberated. Whether the Lord kills or gives protection, he is kind to both the demons and the devotees. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutala Svayam Rupa Karamayam Dudakti Svaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapara Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Tam Sajivam Sarvetam Sarvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Shra Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Shri Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpaturvyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you all for joining us today to help me remember Krishna. And thank you, Krishna, for giving us such nice verses to speak on today to help us to remember you. So again, the verses are: the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, with the cooperation of Sankarshan Balaram, performed activities beyond the mental comprehension of even such personalities as Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. For instance, Krishna arranged the battle of Kurukshetra to kill many demons for the relief of the entire world. So I'll just quickly comment on one thing, even though Prabhupada didn't put anything in a purport for this. But I just want to emphasize here how incredible it is that Krishna's activities are beyond the mental comprehension of even personalities as Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. And in the verse, it mentions Sura Ishvari, the controllers of the universe. So like even all the controllers of the universe, they cannot comprehend Krishna. So who are we to try to comprehend Krishna when we are much, much, much smaller controllers, barely able to control our own mind and senses, what to speak of controlling universes. And yet they could not even comprehend Krishna. So the funny story, we were just celebrating the holidays, right? And of course, you know, we go and you see your family. My family are not devotees, or they're not conscious of the fact that they're devotees, because every living being is actually a devotee of Krishna. So in their unconsciousness of their, you know, being devotees, of course they ask, oh, how are you? What are you doing? What have you been doing? I had just been teaching a Gita class, and my uncle was asking me what I was teaching about. And so I just, you know, tried to give a vague answer, knowing that he's not really all that interested. And he is kind of like a impersonalist / atheist. So he was asking the question, you know, or he's not exactly an atheist, although Prabhupada sometimes would refer to impersonalists also in the category of atheists. And he asked the question, he was like, why do you spend so much time talking about the divine when the divine is beyond our comprehension? And if any time you try to talk about the divine, it becomes, if you try to talk about the divine, then it's not divine, because the divine is not capable of being talked about. And I agree with that point. In one sense, like that we can't, you know, the aspect of his point that we can't actually comprehend the divine. I agree with that point. But the point that we shouldn't spend time talking about the divine. So I just kind of laughed, because, you know, no one in your family, unless they're actually conscious of the fact that they're devotees, really wants to hear your explanation or really wants to hear your Bhagavatam class. So I kept it short and cute and just whatever came out. You know, we try not to preach to our family members when they're not interested, or we try not to preach to anyone when they're not interested, because it can actually do the opposite of bringing them closer to Krishna. But because he brought it up, he was like, yeah, what's the point of talking about the divine? Because you can't actually talk about the divine, and then it's not divine. And my response was, because they were sitting around, you know, I think it was like we were having a family holiday party or whatever. So they're sitting around drinking, eggnog and whiskey or whatever and talking politics. And I just said, well, because if you don't spend time talking about the divine or trying to understand the divine, then you'll just sit around drinking whiskey and eggnog and talking about politics. And he laughed. He thought that was funny. And it's the truth, actually. It's like, oh, okay, if you're divine, I'm divine, we're all divine. We don't have to do anything about it. We might then, if you don't actually try to cultivate a relationship with the divine, then you're just going to cultivate a relationship with this material world, with the temporary pleasures of this world. But I didn't get into it with him so much, but it was just funny that he brought that up. But the point is true, that that we cannot comprehend Krishna. And yet we spend our ideal life as aspiring devotees is to spend 24 hours a day remembering and comprehending, trying to comprehend Krishna, the incomprehensible. And there's, it said in the Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, how Lord Balaram as Sankarshan, with his, unlimited hooded, unlimited heads, every single one of those heads is glorifying Krishna in a different way, and it never ever repeats anything. And this has been going on for eternal time. I would say you can't even say it's been going on since the beginning of time, because there is no beginning of time, because we're eternal. Krishna's eternal. So Sankarshan is also eternal and has been glorifying Krishna with unlimited different heads, explaining unlimited different aspects of Krishna, never repeating himself, and never ever getting tired, and never coming to any conclusion or end of Krishna's glories. So who are we, of course, to try to glorify Krishna? But that is our duty, and that's what devotees like to do. They want to talk about Krishna. They want to hear about Krishna, even if it's the same thing again and again, trying to understand deeper and more intimate aspects of sweetness of the same pastimes, because Krishna is unlimited. So his pastimes are unlimited, and even the same pastime is unlimited, because they're going on for eternity and never lose their sweetness. So it's like really exciting time here. We're like building up to the 10th canto here, and yeah, it's really, really sweet. So I want to go back to text 61, and we'll discuss this verse, which emphasizes so much about the importance of remembering Krishna. So here, text 61 is to show causeless mercy to the devotees who would take birth in the future, in this age of Kali. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, acted in such a way that simply by remembering him, one will be free from all the lamentation and unhappiness of material existence. Isn't Krishna so kind? In other words, he acted so that all future devotees, by accepting the instructions of Krishna consciousness stated in Bhagavad Gita, could be relieved from the pains of material existence. I like how these, I don't remember seeing this in very many places in Prabhupada's translations, but he gave like a mini purport within the translation, and then a purport as well. It's interesting. So there's this verse is specifically talking about the importance of remembering Krishna and how kind he is to those of us in Kali Yuga, that he makes it so easy that all we have to do is remember him, because Krishna is very well aware that Kali Yuga is filled with so much suffering and lamentation and sorrow and so many difficulties. So shout out to all my devotees out there who are going through whatever it is that we're all going through in this age of Kali Yuga, whether it's the suffering of the body and the mind, or the suffering caused by the elements, or COVID, or the suffering, so many different forms of suffering out there, especially magnified in Kali Yuga. And Krishna, and it's stated here that just by remembering Krishna, we can overcome that. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and how that whole scientific process works. And it's also important to note that there's many different ways of remembering Krishna. Like, you can remember, it said, by meditating on his names, by meditating on his form, by meditating on his qualities, by meditating on his pastimes, by meditating on his holy dham, his devotees. There's so many different ways of remembering Krishna. And it's fine that we each have different ways that we like to remember Krishna. There may be different processes of remembrance that that resonate with us more than others. I really like to think of, when I'm really struggling, I like to think of Krishna's form, because I'm kind of an artist and like to do a lot of deity worship. So Krishna's form and the beauty of, in Kali Yuga, we're so obsessed with our bodies. It's like too much, right? And then you think of Krishna's beautiful form. And it's like, such a relief, People are just so way too obsessed with the beauty of their bodies in Kali Yuga. But how beautiful is Krishna's body, but this particular verse is talking about the process of remembering Krishna by meditating on his pastimes, because it said Krishna appeared and performed all these different activities. Why? So that we have something to talk about. So that we're not just sitting and speculating on what is the divine. Oh, let's talk about the divine. And like, oh, something so nice and beyond my comprehension. No, Krishna is comprehensible because he makes himself the incomprehensible Supreme Personality of Godhead comes so that we can, and performs all these different pastimes so that we have something to comprehend. He kills demons. He serves his devotees. He frolics in the forest of Vrindavan. He becomes a king in Mathura, He marries 16,108 wives. What an incredible thing. Although it's not that incredible for Krishna, no big deal. He can take care of way more wives than that, And Krishna does all of these things so that we have something to talk about and discuss for hours and hours and years and lifetimes on end, to just discuss about Krishna's sweet pastimes. Because it's hard to remember Krishna if you don't first hear and chant about Krishna. And that's, it's the whole thing of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. In one sense, it's said that like, any of the 9 processes of devotional service, you can perfect your life just by practicing any of them. But there's also a progression there that by hearing and chanting. First you hear. You can't speak about Krishna, you can't chant Krishna's names if you haven't first received anything to speak about, or if you haven't first received the holy names to chant. So it starts with hearing, and then comes chanting, and then comes remembering. And so I'm grateful that that's one of my favorite things about giving Srimad Bhagavatam class, is it like forces you to just be absorbed in remembering Krishna to prepare for a class. It's great. I should give Bhagavatam class every day just to myself, just to like make me have to sit and think of Krishna and remember all of the wonderful things that I've heard in classes and read in Srila Prabhupada's books. So we remember Krishna to the extent that we're absorbed in hearing and chanting. And then we can remember Krishna, because smaranam, or the process of remembrance, is not just like a flickering memory, like, oh yeah, that's Krishna. You're like, yeah, oh yeah, sky's blue, thanks, oh beautiful Krishna. I mean, you should do that, that's great, we should do that, Smaranam is really about like absorption in remembering Krishna, not just like, and it starts with those increase of the flickering moments where we remember Krishna. And those moments of remembering Krishna come from, well, of course, they come from Paramatma and our heart reciprocating with our desire to remember him, and reciprocating with our efforts to remember him by our hearing and chanting. And then Krishna makes us remember him when we're going throughout our day. And as those flickering moments of remembering Krishna increase, then we remember Krishna with more and more absorption and affection, and that's smaranam. Yeah. So there's so much in this topic of remembering Krishna that's important, and I wanted to also discuss a little bit about hold on, I'm going to pull up my notes here because I can't remember actually what I was going to discuss. Oh yes, Kali Yuga and how Krishna, that's like really important. I love how this verse talks, it starts out with how in Kali Yuga, Krishna comes for us. That's all of us in the Zoom room here. That Krishna appears and performs these pastimes so that we can remember him, so that we have something to. And it's stated in the verse that it's his causeless mercy for us to be able to remember him. And so I was thinking it'd be nice to discuss a little bit about like what is actually causeless mercy. So causeless mercy means we don't deserve it. If you think, oh, I want Krishna's mercy, I've worked so hard for Krishna's mercy. Mercy is not something that you earn. It is something that is given as this loving reciprocation. We show Krishna we're trying to remember him by hearing about him, by reading about him, by chanting his names, by serving his devotees. But this aspect of causeless mercy means, okay, we've messed up in Kali Yuga, we've messed up in all the other yugas. We wouldn't be here going through the cycles of different yugas if we hadn't messed up by coming this material world. And so to think that we even deserve to hear about Krishna, that we deserve to sit and chant really great japa, like, well, that's a gift from Krishna. We shouldn't be so puffed up to think that we deserve these things. And so that is really what, that's a whole different subject that I wish we had more time for, but there's other things to discuss. What is causeless mercy? And so maybe all of you can spend some time today really contemplating this and asking yourselves this question, asking Krishna in your heart this question, what does causeless mercy really mean? The essence of it means we don't actually deserve to hear about Krishna. We don't deserve to remember Krishna. And that Krishna is so kind. He's so kind that both to the demons and the devotees. And, those of us even speaking Srimad Bhagavatam may have more of a demon in us than a devotee, but Krishna is so kind that he helps us and allows us to remember him and speak about him to purify us. Of course, I'm only speaking about myself. I'm not talking crap about the other Bhagavatam speakers. They're all great devotees. So this absorption of remembering Krishna is really Krishna's causeless mercy. And it's emphasized, the process of remembering. Sometimes we overcomplicate bhakti by thinking, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that, and I got to do this service, and I got to do that. And that's really a mode of passion, kind of slipping into our bhakti practices. But really, all we have to do is grow in our affection for Krishna. We should endeavor to engage in many of the processes and practices of devotional service. But sometimes we get too caught up in going through the movements that we forget about this essence. It's really just about remembering Krishna with growing affection. And that is the foundational rule in Krishna consciousness as given by Srila Rupa Goswami, is to always remember Krishna. And the second rule is to never forget Krishna. Because he gives so many, listing out all of the different do's and don'ts of bhakti, of a bhakti practitioner. Circumambulate the deities 3 times every day, do ashman like that, don't wear this color, don't do, and sometimes we get so caught up in all the do's and don'ts, but the purpose of them is to always remember Krishna and to never forget Krishna. And some of them, it might be like, wait, that doesn't, not eating, meat, fish, or eggs doesn't necessarily help me to remember Krishna, but it keeps you from being absorbed in, it doesn't directly help you to remember Krishna, but it keeps your mind and your heart pure so that you can remember Krishna. It's a very simple process of, sometimes we overcomplicate things. So don't overcomplicate things. Just think, what can I do in my life that will help me always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna? It's very simple. It seems complicated because our minds are so filled with such complex mumbo jumbo from whatever it is we've absorbed in this lifetime and many other lifetimes. But we just bring it back to the essence, the simple point of always remembering Krishna and never forgetting Krishna. And it says in the Gita, there's also so many different instructions that he gives Arjuna and explaining the different yogic processes. But then at the end of the Gita, Krishna emphasizes this point of man mana bhava mad bhakto mam yaji mam namaskuru. He says, just always think of me. That's it. Just always think of me, worship me, offer your obeisances to me. No problem. Just it's simple. You don't have to do all the different, processes and practices and asanas and this. You can, if it helps you to remember Krishna, then do it. If it doesn't help you to remember Krishna, don't do it. Easier said than done. Much, of course. I just want to acknowledge that. Easier said than done. We might be like, I know this isn't going to help me remember Krishna, but it's my conditioning, fill in the blank of your excuse. Of course, we all have our different excuses. But so it's remembering Krishna, and remembering Krishna becomes more, Krishna makes it so easy also to remember him by performing all these different pastimes, by doing so many wonderful, interesting things for us to discuss. So let's discuss a little bit about this next point of, how does remembering Krishna actually give us freedom from lamentation and unhappiness, as was mentioned in the verse? Like, how does that work? And there's a few different things that I was pondering when contemplating this question. How is it exactly that just by thinking of Krishna, magically all of your lamentation and unhappiness just washes away, and you all of you, I'm sure, have experienced this to some extent. And sometimes you might be like, well, I'm trying to remember Krishna, I'm thinking about Krishna, but my lamentation and my unhappiness aren't disappearing. So we're going to talk about that too. But first, we'll discuss when you're, we'll just address that now, that it's because we're not like totally absorbed. And if our mind is focusing on, whatever issues we have in our life going on, whatever dramas are happening, whatever suffering we're going through, when that is the when that is the majority of our contemplation, then you might think of Krishna, for a little bit, or be trying to think of Krishna, but really you're thinking about yourself and what you're going through and what you wish you had and your own hankerings and your own lamentation. And in the back of your head, you're like trying to remember Krishna, but like it's not absorption of remembering Krishna. So the more we try to absorb ourselves actually in remembering Krishna, then the process of the freedom of lamentation and unhappiness, that begins to happen to the extent that we become absorbed. And this is how it works. So the immediate relief happens because when we actually think about Krishna, then we also we identify with Krishna in a relationship as well. That we identify with, oh, I'm an eternal soul. Krishna's God. Krishna's really awesome. He's really beautiful. He's really amazing. You start thinking, because when you hear about his pastimes, obviously you're going to think about all of his qualities and the way that he displays his wonderful, sweet, qualities in his pastimes. Then you become absorbed in thinking of Krishna, and it puts all of our seemingly big problems into perspective. We think something, people we're in Kali Yuga, we're really dumb, right? We're just like, and we're really self-centered and shallow for the most part. And when we start chanting Hare Krishna, that doesn't just go away overnight. We have to work on actually identifying with as souls, and we have to work on identifying in our relationship with Krishna as his servants. And when we become absorbed in thinking about and remembering Krishna's pastimes and remembering Krishna's names, his qualities, his form, then it's like, oh yeah, all of these little things going on in this material world actually aren't such a big deal. Even if they are a big deal in the material world, but when you take a step back and you think and you realize by studying the Shastra, by chanting the holy names, by remembering Krishna's pastimes, that this is just a flicker in time. Not that we shouldn't be responsible human beings, not that we should ignore our, duties while we're in these, temporary bodies, but that this lifetime and the suffering of this lifetime is very short. We may even become absorbed in the suffering of like one moment of time, very, like the best example is like, oh, a boyfriend breaks up with the girlfriend and the girlfriend breaks up with the boyfriend, and you think, okay, but in 10 years, is it really going to matter? In 50 years, next lifetime, is it going to matter? No. In the span of eternal time, is it going to matter? No. So all of the other things going on, even much bigger problems like losing loved ones, and well, that's probably a big one. Like I can't, struggling to think of anything more than that. Like losing loved ones, whether they're relatives or friends or great devotees that we're close to, that's a big one. And not that we don't feel the pain of those things, but we see that, so many lifetimes happen, so many deaths happen, and I'm an eternal servant of Krishna, and Krishna is wonderful. Krishna is amazing. And so when we remember Krishna, even the biggest, most difficult things that we have to face in this material world become, those pains become relieved. But don't take my word for it. Try it for yourself. like the process of Krishna consciousness speaks for itself. When you're going through it, try to absorb yourself in remembering Krishna and just see, does the process work? Like when you're not just thinking about Krishna a little bit, when you really try to, apply yourself and absorb yourself and pray to Krishna to reveal himself to you, that do your problems shrink in size? And can you even laugh and smile in the face of difficulties, remembering Krishna? And we see great devotees, they do that. So so that's like the immediate effect of absorbing yourself and remembering Krishna. But the long-term effects is that you get inner satisfaction. And when you're really long-term absorbed in remembering Krishna, there's no need because of that inner satisfaction, there's no need for looking for satisfaction outside of yourself. So then you stop engaging in the activities that gave you the suffering and the lamentation in the first place, right? You stop engaging in the activities of karmic of action and reaction and the cycle of karma, and then because you become absorbed in thinking of Krishna, and satisfied in the loving relationship as master and servant or beloved that one has with Krishna, that it's like, I don't need to do all those things that everyone else and that all the billboards and the magazines and the internet is telling me I need to do to get satisfaction, because I'm pretty satisfied in remembering Krishna. And then because all of those things, they give us so many karmic reactions that keep us bound in this material world. And to the extent that you enjoy in this material world, to that same extent, you have to go through so much suffering when your enjoyment is taken away from you. So then there's no, that gets rid of the long-term lamentation and unhappiness. And even more long-term than that is eternally. If we remember Krishna at the time of death, Krishna says in the Gita, Anta kale chamam eva smaran mukta kalevaram ya prayati samad. I can't remember the rest of the verse. Sorry. Sorry. It's been a while since I went over verses, but Krishna says that, anyone who remembers him at the time of death at once comes to him and attains his nature, and gets that, attains to an eternal form just by remembering Krishna at the time of death. And that happens from being absorbed in remembering Krishna throughout one's life. Then one naturally remembers Krishna at the time of death. And then you're relieved of all lamentation and unhappiness that comes from this material world, because you go to Krishna in the spiritual world. You get to hang out with Krishna and serve Krishna there, and interact with him in whatever your swarup is with Krishna, which comes much later, that Krishna reveals that to us. But now we can still be thinking in terms of a relationship with Krishna, even if we don't know how we're supposed to be eternally serving him in the spiritual world. We're all eternally serving Krishna. So we know, I'm an eternal servant of Krishna. Krishna is my beloved Lord. Let me serve him. It's simple like that. And that just by remembering Krishna, then at the time of death, it's that magical scientific process of how Krishna then brings the soul to him. Whatever you think of at the time of death, that's what you get. So then when Krishna performs all these pastimes for a few different reasons, and one that's emphasized in the verse is so that we can remember him. And then Krishna or Srila Prabhupada emphasizes in the purport to the verse how Krishna performs these pastimes not just it's interesting that in this purport, Prabhupada brings up the verse Paritranaya sadhanam vinashaya chaduskritam dharma samstarpanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge, where Krishna, it's a famous verse in the Gita where he says that wherever he says, to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants or the demons, Krishna, and to reestablish the principles of dharma, of religion, Krishna says he appears himself again and again, different yuga after yuga. And but then Prabhupada says in this purport, and it's interesting, he says, well, it's not really so much to kill the demons, even though Krishna said that he comes to kill the demons. He does, he comes to kill the demons, but his main purpose, it's so nice that the devotee can actually help us to see things more clearly and really reveal deeper aspects. His main purpose of coming is actually to serve his devotees by giving them something to remember, by and interacting in a sweet way with his devotees, to increase their affection for him, and also to leave behind all of these pastimes for us to remember and increase our affection for him. And because, as Prabhupada mentioned, Krishna can empower anyone to kill the demons. It's not a big deal, He had Arjuna take care of it. Krishna was just the chariot driver. He said, Arjuna, you take care of all this, killing all the, the people on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And it's also in terms of establishing the principles of religion. Krishna can do it, he can do anything. He can do everything. But he can also have, send empowered representatives, Shaktivesh avatars and different incarnations. He can send others to reestablish principles of religion. And that's why we see there's so many different religions in this world, and people fight over which one is right, but it's oftentimes just different. Krishna sending different people to wake people up and try to reestablish the principles of religion, depending on the time, place, and circumstance, and where people are at and what they need to hear. Sometimes they need to hear, that, thou shalt not kill. Sometimes they need to hear, thou shalt not commit adultery. And sometimes they're like, people like Arjuna are like, duh, I don't need, he's like above, he already knows these things. So Krishna instructs him further, deeper science of remembering and understanding and loving God. So Krishna's real purpose of coming to this world isn't just to kill demons and reestablish principles of religion, because he can have others do that. But he himself comes to perform these loving pastimes to please his devotees. Sometimes in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he comes to try to understand the love of his devotees, of the love of Srimati Radharani. And he comes to perform pastimes to attract and enchant those of us that have been stragglers in this material world, still trying to hang on to some enjoyment in Kali Yuga. Krishna comes and performs pastimes to attract us to remember him. But his real business in performing and coming is to serve his devotees. And so then one might ask, why does Krishna kill the demons in the first place? Well, it's said that he comes to kill the demons. Sometimes it's said just so that him and the cowherd boys can work up an appetite, so they can enjoy the wonderful prasadam cooked by Mother Yashoda and the gopis at lunchtime. Otherwise, they won't have as much of an appetite if they hadn't spent the day killing demons. But as emphasized in the purport, that he does so actually to show mercy to them. Out of his kindness, he liberates them. Almost all of the demons were given liberation. Of course, their liberation is not the same liberation that the devotees get. They get mostly impersonal liberation. Putana was a special case. There's a couple that were special cases that got, but we'll be discussing that in the very near future when we get into the 10th canto. So we'll end with this point of how Krishna is so kind that he helps us to remember him. He's kind to the demons who are forgetting him. He's by killing the demons and liberating them. And he's kind to us, especially in Kali Yuga, because he comes in the form of his holy names, and he comes as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to show us what a devotee, how a devotee should act. And he comes and performs all of these sweet pastimes for us to talk about and think about, and we can be absorbed in the coming months in these pastimes. So thank you all. We're a minute over. Wow, time went by really fast. If anyone has any questions, I can stay. Is that okay? I can stay an extra couple minutes if anyone has any questions. I can't hear you, Ananda Bihari Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Can you hear me
Hare
now?
Krishna. Yeah.
Yeah. Just wanted to appeal to your class how you put so concisely and nicely how Krishna comes to help us remember him, and also, get some appetite, work up some appetite by killing the demons. That's great. So we don't have to kill them.
Yeah.
I see there's something in the chat from Jamuna Jaya, Andrea, Athena.
Oh yeah, chat. Sorry. Oh, some really beautiful comments. Yeah. Thank you all for your wonderful comments. Yeah, Krishna's so kind. He's so sweet. Pastimes are unlimited. Oh, we have, is that a question, Shikshastika Prabhu? Or are you just giving me a high five? Oh, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. It was a question and a comment.
Oh yeah, comment.
I liked your first example about how you had a party and everybody was sitting around talking about politics and eggnog and whiskey and stuff like that. I used to be like that even a little more than a decade ago. I was actually an activist kind of like, and I would go to rallies and stuff. I was actually the Move On coordinator for Pittsburgh, and I had a megaphone, but now my megaphone is down in the basement. It's collecting dust and cobwebs. So I'm now a proud inactivist. But anyway, I used to, I'm an activist for reading books. That's what I do mostly, is read audiobooks, Prabhupada's books. But I was thinking, I used to watch these political talk shows, and I would ask my wife, why don't they talk about Krishna? And she would just laugh. So they're not going to talk about Krishna. But the thing is, the question that I had was, you said in the beginning that you can't really even understand Krishna, even when you talk about him. And I find that myself, because I like to read books, I don't trust my mind at all. And in fact, I don't even think, when I'm trying to remember Krishna, I don't know how to remember Krishna. I want to remember him the way Lord Chaitanya and all the previous acharyas. So I read the books in order to understand how they felt about Krishna, instead of just my own idea. So I just try to read books and understand exactly what's coming off the page. And then if Krishna allows me to think of him, even though I'm always striving to understand Krishna through this language and through these books, I wait until I can actually crystallize it from the message on the page in order to understand it more clearly and deeply, instead of trying to understand it myself. So how can I accelerate that progress in a bona fide way? Like, not just trying to think of Krishna on my own sentimental platform, but actually trying to understand Krishna through the Shastra and the previous acharyas.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful question. And I think because of your sincerity of the desire to want to understand Krishna, to want to know Krishna, then Krishna reveals himself. And he reveals himself through, of course, by studying the Shastra, but for the Shastra to come alive and for it to actually make sense to us. Krishna is the source of remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So he gives us the ability to remember him. And so you're one thing that I would say in response to your question that comes to mind and comes to heart, of how do you accelerate that process of Krishna kind of revealing himself to us in a bona fide way, not just like speculating about Krishna and who he might be or what our relationship with him might be, but in the way that's, you know, trying to really sincerely be in line with our previous acharyas. I would say that, not just I would say, we've also read and heard from my spiritual master and my spiritual teachers as well, that by praying to Krishna to help us to understand him, one of the ways you're already doing it by showing Krishna through your actions that you want to understand him. You want to try to comprehend him. And then Krishna gives us the ability to comprehend the incomprehensible. And that itself is incomprehensible. You know, that Krishna that he gives us the ability to understand him to the extent that, you know, he thinks that we're, you know, ready, and to the extent that he's also reciprocates with our desire. So we can pray to Krishna, you know, my dear Krishna, you know, if there's something we're reading, oh, I keep reading, I'm not this body, but I still somehow think that I am. And we can pray to Krishna, please help me to have some realization of what it is that I'm reading and hearing. And the processes of devotional service, Krishna reveals himself through all of that, through chanting. You know, it said even just by chanting, Krishna can reveal himself, even if you don't read about Krishna at all. But if we don't read about Krishna, then we might not know that if the realizations we're getting from our chanting are bona fide or not. So, yeah, all of the processes of devotional service work together. And it's one that I like to emphasize, that I feel like sometimes is underemphasized, is the process of prayer, of actually talking to Krishna, because he hears us, you know, he's there within our heart waiting. He sees us talking to everyone else about our problems and our concerns, and he's waiting for us to talk to him. So this process of just asking Krishna, please help me to understand you, like, and not just speculate on who you are. Please help me to understand who you really are. So
that's
thank
nice.
you for your wonderful question.
I like the point about prayer. I find that myself, that prayer is easier when I'm actually understanding exactly what Krishna is trying to tell me, and then I pray to him, you know, through the scripture, because, you know, it just makes it easier for the flow of thoughts to come out, you know, because, you know, just like Prahlad Maharaj, when he was touched by Lord Nrsingadev's, here's my Lord Nrsingadev, by the way, if you want to see him. That actually was my spiritual master's Murti. But anyway, yeah, I just find that it's easier to actually, when you're connected with Krishna, then pray to him. If I start from my own feeble mind and then try to pray, it's hard to actually understand who he really is. Anyway, that's all I had to say.
No, that's great. But you said that it's easier for you to remember Krishna, and to have some understanding of Krishna and then pray to him. That's true for sure. And at the same time, we can also pray to Krishna to help us to understand him, so that we can offer better prayers. And if there's something that we don't understand, we can ask Krishna to help us to understand it if we see something, you know. Yeah. So Ananda Bihari Prabhu, do you have any addition, or should we?
No. I just wanted to appreciate your discussion. It's so wonderful. I was thinking, yeah, Krishna can hear us. No need to use a megaphone. He's right there in our heart. listening, hearing our prayers. Thank you very much for bringing that up.
Yeah. Jai. All right. Thank you so much for everyone's wonderful comments in the chats and the wonderful comments in the discussion. And Jai, Gruntraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Krishna's Transcendental Pastimes Ki Jai.
Tulasi Rani Devi Prabhu Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day with Krishna.
You too. All of
Okay.
you. Hi. Hi, well.